Pro Wrestling Report, we're going to go ahead and talk to Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Good God Almighty. Can you tell us a little bit about what you were doing here in Milwaukee?
You know, guys, you follow wrestling. So come here. I know you know the first thing we got to do is give a big ho. So here we go. Ho! Kind of gets the blood flowing, gets the air in your lungs, you know. Kind of wakes you up in the a.m.
Well, Hacksaw, welcome back to Milwaukee, a town that you've been to plenty of times. It's a little cold in here, not as cold as your hometown. Where are you from again?
Originally upstate New York, a little town called Glens Falls, up in over by Lake Placid, kind of.
Lake Placid, also a place where they held some of the 1980 U.S. hockey in the Olympics.
Winter Olympics, that's right, up in Lake Placid. I went up and I watched the bobsled. It was the luge. It was great. You stand in the cold for an hour and then go, and wait another hour. It was great, I'll tell you.
Basically, what we do on these interviews here, we'd like to know how you got into the business, so what got you started, and give us a brief story on Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Well, I was mainly a football player when I was in high school, and I was highly recruited out of high school. I was lucky enough to have a good high school football career. And then I ended up playing for SMU in Dallas, Texas. And on a recruiting trip to SMU, I met Fritz von Erich.
Okay.
And Fritz said, hey, you'd be a good wrestler. And I said, no, I'm a ball player, So I went on, and the Falcons picked me up. I was with them for 1 year. I had 2 knee surgeries. Knew I had no real future in professional football. Gave Fritz a call, went down there, and took off, started wrestling.
Excellent. The Von Erichs, if you will, one of the most famous families, along with the Gagnes and the Hart family as well. What was the first, after you worked with Fritz, did you make your way into the WWF?
No, actually, from Fritz I did go up, but I worked for Vince Sr. when it was the old WWF. They did a show in Glens Falls, and Arnie Skolin saw me. He brought me down. They used me on TV. I was working with guys like Sergeant Slaughter and Ken Patera, Angelo Mosca, people like that. The old man kind of liked me, Vince Sr., sent me over to Hawaii. I worked for Maivia for about 6 or 8 months over there. Still didn't figure out the business too bad. Well, came back down, went to Georgia, worked for Georgia Championship Wrestling, back when Gordon Soley and the Freebirds were really hot down there. The Bird.
We have a Donnybrook, a Pierce.
Yeah, and that was a great time because that was my first true territory where you wrestle every night and you travel with the boys. We all lived together in one motel complex. It was a lot of fun, and I got to know the Freebirds real well, and God bless Terry Gordy. But I went from there when Georgia, the Carolinas took over Atlanta. I left there because I didn't get along too well with Ole Anderson. I went down, I worked for Pensacola, Fuller's, to Rob Fuller. Went from Fuller's and I went out to San Antonio when Buck Roby and Bruiser Brody called me. They said, come out to San Antonio. But I had a good deal down there in Pensacola, I had a good guarantee, and I was living on the beach, having a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of fun. And I said, I don't know. But Brody said, hey, you want to learn the business, come out here to San Antonio. Their first show I went out for was a big Houston show, met Paul Bosch. Got my biggest one-night payoff ever. Was there for probably 2 years, and then went on to Mid-South.
Now, when did the 2x4 come into play?
When I went into Blanchard's territory out in San Antonio. So that was probably 82 maybe. Yeah.
And basically, that brings us into the time in the WWF. Now, a lot of people...
Because, excuse me, but I'm glad you asked me that question. Because you don't fully everybody folks, hey, Hacksaw, why do you carry a 2x4? And I said, well, in professional wrestling, we got all these guys out there with feathered boas and sequin robes. I said, there's nothing fancy, Dan, about Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Just a 2x4 and the flag of the United States of America. Give me a ho, brother. Ho! You're not kidding.
Exactly. That's what I was getting at.
Just there. People say, where's that Hacksaw character come from? I said, it comes from right in there. I am Hacksaw. I just try to stay on my best behavior most of the time.
Excellent. Your time in WCW now. Later on, there was unfortunately, you had some illness that had happened to you. But we're glad to see that you're up and running. Now, let's talk a little bit about the XWF. Notice how we skipped right over WCW. Let's talk about the XWF. What is going on in XWF?
What is something about the WCW? They almost kind of self-destructed. They had such a fine vehicle there to make pro wrestling a premier sport and really overtake McMahon as they did for a couple of years when they first brought us in. But then it's just egos got out of control there.
It's quite ironic because actually I'm the WCW fan. I'm the guy that rooted for the underdogs and the guys such as the Chris Benoits and the Chris Jerichos. But I'm so hurt by it, I don't want to talk about it either. Because, I mean, all the egos and all the money got in the way.
Well, it was, you know, for a guy like myself, it wasn't too bad. You know, I made my bread. Mm-hmm. I spent a lot of time with my family. And it was, though they didn't use me, what they tried to do with me at WCW was use me to build a young talent. They get guys in there like Sergeant Pittman or Alex Wright. They said, Hacksaw, we want this guy to go over in 7 minutes. So I go out there, I do the job. The kid get up, walk out of the ring. I stand up and go, ho! And 10,000 people would stand up and go, ho! And then I go, USA! USA! And the whole place would be USA. And then I go back to the dressing room and I tell Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo, you can't kill me off.
Exactly, and there's a place for guys.
You better believe that's a shoot interview. You can't kill me off.
Exactly, and that's the kind of guys that I like rooting for, the guys that are willing to do the thing for the company, willing to put a guy over like Alex Wright. I enjoy I mean, not because it's Alex Wright.
Your payday.
Exactly, you're doing your job.
It's a whole different deal.
You're doing your job just like the USA, and everyone in the Americans, everyone in the country likes to do their job and feel a little bit of pride underneath just because you're doing what you're supposed to do.
Well, the deal was they tried to embarrass me. They said, we're going to make him a janitor, have him clean toilets. Great. Put me on TV. I'll steal all the steam off your stars. And all of a sudden the janitor deal starts to get over. Well, we'll put the brakes on that. So let's shave his beard and cut his hair and turn him against America after 21 years of carrying the American flag. Well, 2 months after that decision, the company's out of business. Just goes to show you that some people are out to, it almost was like a conspiracy.
No, I believe in conspiracies myself, actually. All right, XWF, what do we got going on? I hear it's no more prima donnas is what I hear.
Yeah, it's going to be a great alternative for the fans out there to see something different than what McMahon puts on television. You know, he's always going to be number one, but for every Hertz, there's an Avis. And we want to give the fans an alternative. But it's going to be a little more family-oriented show. You know, my wife's grandmother watched wrestling her whole life. Doesn't watch it anymore. Hasn't watched it in years, He's
probably offended by it.
Geez, I can't understand why, I go to church on Sundays, and I don't let my two little girls watch that stuff. They want to see what I do on television. I don't let them watch the show.
Well, Hacksaw, thank you for coming by.
Fellas, you know what we've got to do before we leave, don't you?
I think Frank does.
You do, brother.
Yes, I do.
Here we go.
Hello, USA! Hacksaw Jim Duggan right here on the Pro Wrestling Report.